If you hate your job, if you're struggling to get out of a burnout from work, whether you work for yourself or if you have a boss, if you're your own boss or not, this episode is for you, because I'm going to talk today about ways that you can stop hating your job and start loving it again. Hi, I'm Melissa Ann Dillon with Raising Kindness TV, and I have been thinking a lot about your time and how much we have of it. We all have the same amount of time. I talked about in a previous episode. We all have 168 hours in a week. Why on earth do we want to spend it working 50 plus hours a week in an environment we don't like? You actually have more control over this than you might think right now, especially if you're knee deep in feeling overwhelmed, burned out, tired, and just straight up over it and counting down the days to taking a holiday. I want to talk about that. So I am going to go into a couple stories about myself and my own experiences and having a job I didn't like, or even in the present job that I have where I own my own business and I'm running it, and I actually felt burnout earlier this year, and that's kind of what inspired this, is even if you're in a job that you technically love, it is easy if you're overwhelmed to feel like you don't like it anymore and it's no longer for you. Also, if you have a boss that's taking advantage of your time, if you're spending more than 40 hours a week at work, I'm going to talk today about some things that you can do to shift not only the way that you look at your own time, but maybe inspire your boss to look at your time with a little bit more respect. So going into your own mindset about your time, forgive me if I am a little repetitive here. I want to make sure I cover a lot. This might be a longer episode than normal because I'm so passionate about working and liking your work, enjoying your work, and some things that you can do to enjoy it. So first off, whether you are customer facing or not, the number one thing that you can do is start enjoying the people you're surrounded by at work. So the people I'm talking about are coworkers, the executives above you, people maybe that you manage, even the customers that you interface with on the day-to-day. We are all human. We all have our own tendencies, our own idiosyncrasies, our own quirks that may be driving you nuts in the workplace right now. Can you think of somebody that maybe is annoying you or doesn't treat you well? Think about that for a second. Take it in. And now think about that person and their own personal life. How much do you know about what they may be going through right now? Are we thinking about a customer, an upset customer maybe that you spoke with yesterday or earlier this week or last week? I'm recording this on a Monday. That really upset you and maybe set you off on the wrong foot for the rest of the day or even the remainder of the week. Thinking about that person too. Or someone, an employee who is struggling to understand your perspective and follow directions. Is there another way that you can explain what your expectations are? Do your expectations make sense even? So take a look at their perspective, the other person's perspective, and invite yourself to find ways that you may have some things in common. Do you both have little ones at home? Do you both have your own stresses and overwhelms that may be seeping into the relationships that you're surrounded by right now? Maybe they have their perspectives of you that aren't correct, all because maybe a couple conversations together may resolve that. I've been in customer service for a long time. I've gone through weeks and weeks and weeks of customer service training with big corporations before I worked on my own. So I can tell you, I promise, that if you come at people with your heart in mind and putting your heart first, then you may discover that you have a lot more in common than you thought you did. You may find that it's simply a miscommunication. And I want to invite you to think of the old adage of the customer is always right. Whether you work for yourself or for an employer, if you take this and dig a little deeper with it, you may discover a whole new world of compassion. So of course you have those customers who are irate and totally wrong. Of course you're going to have a boss where it's just like, what? Are you kidding me? You're asking me to do that? That doesn't make any sense. But if you think of it of the perspective of the customer is always right, it invites you to look at their perspective. and understand it. Because once you can understand their perspective and how it differs from your own, you can clearly see the gap between the two and then make a decision. Do you need to make adjustments to see their point of view and go with what they're saying? Or do you need to take that extra moment to educate them on why you do the things that you do? So I want to say that again. So the customer is always right doesn't necessarily mean they're straight up right and that you have to listen to them. I'm not saying to let people walk all over you. But what I am saying is inviting yourself to look at their perspective, compare it to your own so you can clearly see the gap between the two and close that gap, either by inviting them to meet you in the middle, explaining the why behind what you do and why, and even considering to shift the way that you do things because maybe their way actually does make more sense. It's always an invitation for learning when you put the customer first, customer equaling anyone you're interacting with. I use customers always right for everything because I grew up in a family where there were business owners, and that was always something I heard even as a young one. And so I was always looking at, what does that even mean? I mean, how is the customer always right? I mean, you let them walk all over you? No, that's not what that means. It's just inviting your mind to another perspective so that you don't forget that there are humans involved in your interactions every day. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Another thing that may be really that may be putting you in a position where you're struggling with work right now, or burnout, or not liking it, is that maybe you're working too much. I wish I had my notes in front of me right now. I don't, but I know for a fact from a number of studies, I think Michael Hyatt brings it up in his book, Free to Focus. I highly recommend it. I'll put it in the show notes. That's a huge one, especially if you're a manager at work or you own your own business. Free to Focus is awesome because it helps you to do more, achieve more while doing less. But anyway, that anything over 55 hours is counterproductive. If you're working more than 55 hours, I'm going to go ahead and throw in the commute there too. If you're commuting, if the average commute is about 55 minutes a day to and from work, so 55 hours of work or more, your productivity and ability to focus will deplete dramatically. So for the last 4 years, I have worked very hard to work an average of 40 hours or less per week, and I am getting more done and bringing in more revenue in my business than I ever have in my entire life and all the businesses I've done, and I've done a few. If you don't believe me, challenge me. Put in your challenges in the comments, what it is that you're struggling with. Why do you feel that you have to work more than 40 hours? Now, it doesn't happen overnight to adjust your job to be able to fit in a 40-hour cube, because I know that if you work under somebody, if you have a manager who's piling work onto you, it is not okay. And they may not even realize that they're doing it. Sometimes they're just overwhelmed themselves. So it's, again, that customer is always right thing that I was telling you about, inviting you to look at the other person's perspective. Your boss may be overwhelmed all on their own. They're getting their own pressures from their own higher-ups. And if you are your own boss, I know it's so easy to say that you just have to do it yourself. Oh, I promise you, I've been there. I remember the first time that I delegated something to someone and my palms were sweating. I was terrified. I was writing up the project order on Fiverr, I think. Yep, it was Fiverr. And it was for something simple like a logo. And guess how much it was costing me? $5. And my palms were sweating. I was freaking out. I knew right then, this has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with my fear of delegating, my fear of giving this to somebody else and them messing it up and me having to go back and do it all over again anyway. It took me about 15 minutes to submit that order. They had it back to me within 24 hours and it looked fine. It was good enough. And good enough sometimes, progress over perfection, is so liberating. So how many things that are on your plate that are making you work 55 plus hours a week? I'm going to say 55 because I know a lot of you work that much. I mean, even 50, even 45. How many hours can you shave off by just going either, you know what, I don't have to do this at all. You might be wasting your time on reports that no one's even looking at. It's so funny how that can happen. I've had plenty of times where I had a requirement at work to submit a report. I bet you can relate to this too. You might even have some reports. How many reports are you submitting to your managers where I bet you if you try to not submit it, especially if you guys don't talk about it for a while, they might not even be looking at them. Test it out. See what happens. It's kind of funny, right? I mean, I've had that happen where I tested it out. Someone told me, and there were a couple reports where they're like, hello, Melissa, I need that report. It's like, okay, cool. Now I confirmed to them and confirmed to me that it's needed. But what about those other reports that are just silly and they're taking up 20, 30 minutes of your time every week or every month? That's 20, 30 minutes so you can be doing something more productive or going home to spend time with your family. So figure out for yourself. Everyone's different. Tell me in the comments again, what is taking up your time at work, some ideas about what you could take out of your schedule. And if you feel like your heart's going to jump out of your chest and you want to grab me by the throat and strangle me right now when I'm saying this, tell me why. Tell me in the comments, challenge me. I'll put an episode out. I'll answer your questions and I will do the work for you. I'll put the thoughts in because I've done this enough times where I've reevaluated my schedule. I promise you there are hours that you can get back of your life that do not need to be dedicated from work. Another thing is, are there things at home that are keeping you at work because you don't want to deal with them right now? That's a whole other episode. I won't get into that right now, but maybe that's a thought. If that's something that you're struggling with, please let me know because I will do that episode sooner than later if you need it. I know how that feels. Okay, so moving on. Some ways that you can improve the way that you feel about your job right now is to genuinely engage with joy in what you're doing. So what I mean by that is if you're going through your job and you're feeling in your mind that you're just over it, then it's going to self-perpetuate. So if you can let that go, work on that today. As soon as you get off this episode, right now I'm recording this at the lunch hour. I'll probably publish this. You'll probably be listening to it in the morning. So if you're on your commute right now, make a commitment to yourself to make things more joyful. Smile more. Smiling tells your mind that you're happier by nature. You'll start to feel happier just by smiling more often. Start personal conversations at work. There are a number of studies that have proven that personal interactions at work will give you more energy. Another thing, speaking of energy, is you can go for a walk or a run at some point today. Do something, get yourself outside, get yourself into the sunshine. Right now it's cloudy, it's winter. But no matter what time you're listening to this and no matter where you are, that cool winter air, nuzzled up in a jacket on a nice walk. Sitting outside, maybe on the company patio, or if you're at home, sit outside with a warm cup of coffee and just relish it. Even taking a few minutes to yourself will give yourself that sense of self-control and freedom of your time. When you start to feel like a drone or a slave to your job, that's when things get hard. When you feel like you don't have control over your time. So start taking control. I hope some of this can help you. All of these things you can start implementing right away. And I can go deeper on this. I will. I promise that I will. But I wanted to start with some things that you can implement now. And there are some things that might take a little bit of time, especially if you're looking to shave hours off of your workday and you work for someone else, or if you work for yourself and you need to start delegating. Spend this time right now. And when I say right now, I mean this month, because it could take a little time to evaluate. Just evaluate all the things that you either don't need to be doing anymore, or that you could give to somebody else, or that you can automate. Those are the 3 ways you can get back time as fast as possible. And if you have a manager, sit down with them, ask for a meeting and say, you know what, I am overwhelmed right now. And depending on the heart of your manager, everyone's different. I've had some managers that are really tough. I will tell you, if you're going to challenge your hours and they've been leaning on you, if they are the type of person to take it personally that you want more hours, or that they're more profit-driven instead of heart-driven and they're not really focused on your happiness, you know your boss. So if that's the mindset that they have, there are a couple things that you can do that I've asked to do before, is make a lateral shift to a different team. Or maybe this job isn't for you and you can do the same job somewhere else with someone who is going to take care of you. and look out for you. We're in an economy now where a heart-centered environment is becoming more and more popular. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Please don't forget to subscribe. All right? I'll see you next time.